Well, what kind of shoes do you train in?
I train in...
When you're at the gym, what kind of shoes do you train in?
Honestly, I've been doing a lot of those, the barefoot, barefoot trail running shoes that company that by Amazon Whitten made.
Yeah. The Amazon Whitten.
My $40 barefoot shoes. I'll run in those, maybe like 1 or 2 miles. I will not run.
Did you wear those this morning?
No, I was just wearing my normal Whittens this morning. I would not run 5 miles in trail running shoes, but I will run 1 to 2 miles. And I like them for lifting because I can feel the ground. Mm-hmm. What do you train in?
I train in Rad Global. I only really wear those now. They are awesome on my feet.
But that's not what you wore to High Rocks.
No, I don't remember what I honestly, I think they're New Balance.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure what they are.
I need to
They're
get
literally
in on
right
your
over
game.
there. They're white and black. I don't know what they are, but I'm pretty sure they're New Balance. They're more of a running shoe. My training shoe is a dedicated training shoe, and I do not want to run more than an 800. Maybe I have run a mile. I actually wore no, I didn't. I wore my running shoes when I just recently did the workout Murph, but I would not want to run more than a mile in the shoes that I train in specifically at the gym for my strength training. Yeah, because I
wouldn't say I'm a runner when I'm training. I'm literally doing a mix of running and jumping and lifting. Yeah. So I try to be in, I don't know, I feel like for me, the answer is just those barefoot trail running shoes because I'm not going to be lifting in a classic running shoe.
No. And I
miss me with that.
Yeah. Welcome to Beyond the Reps, where we talk about all things your physical therapist and trainer forgot to tell you. I'm one of your hosts, Whitney Stephenson. I'm a gym owner, a celebrity trainer, and a personal training coach.
And I'm Dr. Hannah Shays, your co-host. I'm a physical therapist and practice owner. Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about shoes. From heels.
Let's get some shows.
From heels to HOKAs, how footwear impacts your body over time. Do you know how footwear impacts your body over time?
Oh, tremendously. And not having footwear impacting your body over time too.
I feel like in a good way.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree. The more time I've been spending outside of footwear, so more barefoot, the better I've been feeling. And it's just, I think, a natural evolution of the year because it's summer now, so I'm on my paddleboard more, I'm barefoot more, walking at the beach a little bit more, and I've been doing a dedicated yoga practice more. And now I've been spending even more time like inviting that into my training. So figuring out a way to do maybe my warm up without my shoes, which has been really cool. So
are you still wearing your toe spreaders?
Did
you take them off?
I'm not wearing them anymore, but I was wearing them.
Whitney was wearing them when I opened the door today.
I was just getting in the spirit for our footwear and foot conversation.
I wore mine yesterday, getting in the spirit.
I feel like is this why there's so many OnlyFans about toes?
Oh, God. How do you know that?
I mean, I've heard through the OnlyFans grapevine.
Wink, wink. Okay, so today we're going to break down running shoes, barefoot shoes, lifting shoes, which are more rigid, and then high heels. Sorry, guys. But we need to talk about high heels for the ladies a little bit and just how these shoes shape your foot and body for long-term health.
Yeah. I don't know that high heels are good for the long run, even though they might
be cute.
Yeah, they might look good for the moment. I do feel good when I wear a heel. I'm like, oh, yeah. The leg is looking a little more defined. I'm a little taller. But over a long period of time, and I'm pretty much every lady I know can like attest to this, where you bring like a flip-flop or something to change into because we're like, okay, we're done with the heel. Like,
we'll talk to someone who's like 85 and they were wearing power heels like in the 90s because that's what women in the corporate world did, and ask them about their shoes and like the numbness in their feet now.
Yeah, now they have a Velcro like slipper.
And this is not, we're not going to be bashing heels this whole episode. We're actually going to talk about how you can still wear heels and take care of your foot because I have a closet full of heels. I will wear them to a wedding. We are not here to bash heels.
No.
Right?
What is that scene in Barbie where it's,
oh my God.
If you've seen the movie Barbie, there's a scene where she has to choose between her plastic world, which is like the high heel, the plastic heel, and then it's like the real world, which is like a Birkenstock.
Having your heels actually touch the ground.
Yes, and having your heels touch the ground. That's such like an iconic moment. But we're going to have our heels touch the ground today.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just breeze over foot anatomy because it's important. I'm going to just give kind of the quick and dirty. We're not going to get into like terms, but for you guys, I want you to know that we have 26 bones in our foot, 33 joints, and over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And I also think that's why if you've ever had a foot injury, it's one of the like most lingering things to deal with. I actually hurt my foot, I think 2 years ago. And there's certain movements that I'm like, I still feel that thing from 2 years ago. So because there's so much going on in the foot, it's not going to heal as quickly or as easily
when you're just on it all the time.
And you're on it all the time. Like I'm not crawling. So
yeah, you have to walk everywhere. So, 100 muscles, that makes me think like, wow, our foot is actually really freaking strong. It should be strong. So the whole foot is designed to support our weight, absorb shock, and allow dynamic movement. So we've got 3 regions. You've got your heel, which is the hind foot. We have the midfoot, which is the middle of your foot, and then the forefoot, which is going to be basically your toes. So 3 areas. And then we have more than one arch. We have the one arch that we're used to seeing where you're like, is my foot flat? Do I actually have an arch?
It's like the sexy arch.
Yeah, there's that one. And then there's some others, but for all intent and purposes, we'll just focus on the fact that arches are shock absorbers for our feet. And then they help adapt to uneven surfaces. So we want to make sure that we have a nice strong arch and we're doing things like foot exercises, or just kind of knowing where our foot is. So the term for that is proprioception.
That's not specific to just your foot though.
No.
That's like in general, like what is your body doing?
Where is my joint in space? And for the foot, proprioception is important just because we need to know where we are in space. And that kind of comes from, you hear me talk about the tripod. So it's like a little triangle in the foot. So you want to be, if you're standing, you want to have awareness of 3 big points in your foot. And in the tripod, that's going to be the knuckle of your big toe, the knuckle of your 5th toe, and a point at your heel. So for those of you who are like, where is the knuckle of my big toe and my 5th toe? It's not the toe, it's the ball of your foot.
Yeah,
so like the knuckles
between.
In your hand, it's the knuckles in your foot.
The point of where your toe and your like foot pad meet. So if you're looking at your hand, like your knuckle is like if you make a fist and you can see your knuckles, if you look at the other side, it's pretty much right where your finger meets your palm.
Yeah.
So same
Ball of the
principle
foot.
On your foot.
So if we're standing in tripod pretty well, then we will automatically have a better posture. Your foot basically affects your posture all the way up to your head. So if you're kind of standing suboptimally and you have really tight calves or something, that throws how your femur, your thigh bone sits at the pelvis. That messes with your pelvis orientation. That goes up towards like your chest. Has my chest rounded? My shoulders, are they rounded? Is my head forward? It really does go all the way up to the head.
Yeah.
If you're not in a good spot with where your feet are. So just starting to get aware of where am I in space, go on this movement journey with us and kind of learn about tripod.
I think too, I've asked people, I remember asking a lot when I was coaching group classes, I was like, can you feel what your foot is doing? They're like looking at me like they've never
thought about
I've never
that
spread
before.
my toes before. And to me, being a swimmer, I was barefoot my whole life. I was like, you've never, like, I remember picking my goggles up with my foot. And like,
but can you do toe yoga? Like separating big toe from the little toes and vice versa?
Yeah.
I could not do that until like 2 years ago.
But you
because of cleats.
Exactly. You spent your whole childhood growing up in a cleat, which is not only, it's a binding shoe, it's protective, you're kicking a ball hard, and you're trying to grip through grass. That's probably slick.
You don't have to grip through grass. You have the pegs in your cleat. So
true,
it just weakens your foot more.
Exactly. So it's like, it's just, you're weakening everything and then protecting it.
Yeah. So not standing
Binding
tripod,
it.
not knowing where my foot was. I mean, up till 2 years ago, like I didn't know really what I know now about foot health and toe spreaders and tripod, and I could not do toe yoga. My left foot, even though I was, both footed playing soccer, I could not splay my toes on my left foot since the age of 5. I could splay my right toes. I couldn't splay my left until I worked on it because that pattern, for whatever reason, it was just so like dormant and atrophied. I couldn't.
You just had to keep building that like neurological connection between your brain and your toe. I would say I didn't have any awareness of what was going on in my feet, but I could do it. As soon as somebody was like, oh, push your pinky toe down, I can push my pinky toe down. But it was because I had spent a lot of time barefoot
and using my
feet, using them for, when you're doing a start, you're gripping with your toes on your start, or a backstroke, I'm really pushing with my toes and feet against a wall, or if I'm doing a flip turn, or, whatever it was, I had an awareness of what was happening in my feet for a long time. That was just built in because of the sport I did. But unfortunately, unless you're doing a barefoot sport, which is only a couple of sports that really are barefoot, you're going to have some binding restriction,
Yeah, especially if you're just doing it all the time. I mean, I was in closed-toed shoes a lot. You go to school, you're in cleats. Shoes. I'm not from Florida. I was not really in flip-flops or Birkenstocks or slides or anything. I was in...
No, we had to wear shoes. There was a girl in my high school who went on a rebellious streak and was like, I'm not wearing shoes. It was her senior year. She never wore shoes.
She was straight up barefoot?
Yeah, I'm from California, so this is like totally common. So she's like, I'm not wearing shoes anymore. And she was in band with me and whatever. And I remember we were getting ready for graduation, and they were not going to give her diploma unless she wore shoes.
No shoes, no service.
Yeah, no shoes, no diploma? What? And like, I think she ended up tying like a hemp thing around her toe and like called it off. You know those like sandals that are literally just like a string that go around your toe and your ankle? They're like a fashion sandal or something. I think she wore something like that, and she ended up getting her diploma and stuff, but I was like, wow. But she was committed. It would be snowing and she would not have shoes on, which I do not recommend.
No.
But she probably is great at toe yoga.
Oh my gosh, if frostbite didn't make her lose
I'll have to check in and see if she's put shoes on since.
So,
to be continued.
I want to run through a list for the listeners of what can cause this poor tripod awareness. So you kind of heard us talk about cleats, the shoes that bind you, they don't let your toes have splay. So imagine a mitten, basically. The cleat is basically putting you in this little hand mitten where your toes are all together in this narrow little space, and then you're not able to have the full splay of the metatarsals, which are the bones that are right below the knuckle bones, basically, right below your toes. So imagine a little mitten on your hand, and your metacarpal bones, the little long finger bones below your fingers and your knuckles, are just all crunched on each other. That affects the fascia. It affects if you were going to push your hands into the ground, you're on this really narrow cup of this mitten on your hand. Translate that analogy to your foot. It's kind of doing the same thing. You're not going to be able to feel the knuckle of your big toe, the knuckle of your fifth toe, and your heel all at once. It's going to throw you off. It can cause a weaker arch. So my first one that causes poor tripod awareness is overly supportive or cushioned footwear. Like thick shoes, arch supports, thick soles, thick arch supports, and then narrow toe boxes, which reduce the sensory feedback, causing our muscles to become detrained.
Which some of these shoes also, the ones that you're saying that have like really narrow toe boxes, they can sneak up right where we don't see them. They could be, not necessarily an overly cushioned thing, but they could be like a spin cleat, right? Like something
Converse.
Converse.
Which are actually really thin, flat.
Or a boot that doesn't, like a pointed boot, or something that doesn't give your...
Mittening the toes.
Yeah, like it's just...
Pulling them in like there's a rubber band around them.
Yeah, it's just constantly constricting.
Number 2 is just weak intrinsic foot muscles, which... That usually happens from disuse because we're in shoes that don't support the muscles needing to be used. Reduced proprioception, we just talked about that. So just poor awareness of where your foot is in space, especially when you're loading on it and standing. So that's usually because of lack of barefoot time, especially in childhood. I feel like childhood is really important for nurturing the foot and awareness.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, it's kind of now becoming more common to not necessarily put your baby in a shoe. Mm-hmm. You know, leaving them to have a little bit more time barefoot while they're developing A, the skill to walk, and then B, figuring out how to, you know, use their feet, how to use their toes, how to do everything.
I don't know how many babies' feet you've seen recently. I see them mostly on Instagram because all my friends are having kids. But like, if you look at a baby's foot, the big toe is kind of far away from the second toe. I don't know. Have you seen a baby's foot recently? It's wide.
Yeah, it is wide.
It's wider than like our feet.
It is wider. It's much wider than our feet.
The shoes that we're putting on.
I think the development of the metatarsals, the longer bones, cause it to come in a little bit. But yeah, you're correct. It's, you know, if you saw a baby with really narrow feet, it would tip over. Like if it was trying to stand up, it would just instantly fall down because it has to be wide because they're trying they're trying to create that base in order to learn how to like get up.
I've seen on Instagram they're making wide barefoot shoes for babies.
Yeah, why not? I mean, or just a sock or no shoe for a while, you know.
And then number 4 is going to be past injury or impairment at the nerves and muscles down in the foot. I mean, if you your foot got run over by a car and your nerves are damaged, well, yeah, that's going to mess up your ability to find tripod. So, I mean, that can be, you know, worked on a little bit with rehab. It's not necessarily a death sentence for the foot, but there are traumas like that can cause issues. I mean, recurrent ankle sprains also mess up where you are in space. I know my husband, Sam, his ankles are so jacked up, both of them. Sometimes we'll be walking like on a trail when we're in North Carolina and he'll just, I just rolled my ankle. Because he's not doing yoga anymore. And when you're barefoot in yoga, he was actually
creating more stability.
He was training himself better. He benefited a lot from that, and use it or lose it. He hasn't done yoga in years, and now he's rolling his ankles again. And he told me,
does he wear dress shoes for work?
Yes.
So
with
he wears like a loafer.
He
wears like a male heel.
You can hear the heel clicking.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it's got a little heel, a little dress shoe. Plantar fasciitis, that can mess with it because there's pain. So, you know, anything where there's a trauma, pain, or a previous injury can affect our tripod ability.
If somebody has plantar fasciitis and is it wise to have them start to tripod?
So I had
to bring awareness into the tripod if you're like, I have plantar fasciitis, which is, can you explain what plantar fasciitis is really quick? Yeah,
plantar fasciitis is just inflammation of the plantar fascia. So that's your arch, that's the base of your foot. The plantar fasciitis usually occurs like if you find your heel, the inner heel where the arch of your foot connects to the fat pad in the heel. It'll usually be really tender. That's true plantar fasciitis. And I usually will work with people on finding tripod because their arches are usually weak. You usually get it from a weak foot, but it's also a weak hip. But a lot of the issues come from up the chain. So we usually work on both. But I had someone do toe yoga. She couldn't do toe yoga. We did tripod awareness. I mean, we did dry needling, but honestly, a lot of it was biomechanical. We did a lot of hip work because what we'll talk about too moving forward is weakness in the foot affects up the chain and vice versa. And then the last one that I have is structural deformities, mobility restrictions. So things like bunions, really rigid arches. If you have a high arch and you're just not getting a lot of mobility out of that. Toe crowding, hallux limitus or hallux rigidus. That's your big toe is really stiff. Like you can't bend it backwards. And then tight calves can cause issues like stiff ankles. If you're really sedentary, you're going to have stiff ankles. So just not moving. Move it or use it. Use it or lose it. Move it or use it.
Move it. Well, and then basically, and who knows really what happens first in some of these scenarios. But so you have all of these kind of like, all these things that are going not for you, disrupting your tripod. And then that's creating more poor movement pattern, which is then worsening the connection that you have with grounding within your tripod, which is then causing worse movement patterns. So you're in a circle of, well, let's just start from the ground up and how can we correct maybe the bad movement and then address the tight calves or address this as starting with that tripod and starting with learning really how to ground yourself just when you're standing up.
Yeah.
Which, when we're talking about grounding, we're not talking about the energetic grounding or the granola grounding of going outside and walking barefoot in the grass, which is great. That's just a different podcast. We're talking about actual grounding within your body, which is, like Hannah said earlier, being able to create pressure in that triangular shape of your heel underneath your big toe knuckle and underneath your pinky knuckle, and pushing, kind of like almost corkscrewing yourself into the ground.
Yeah, so if you're able to do that, you'll have a better alignment at the ankle, knee, and the hip, and that will also help things like even low back pain. Like, so many people with collapsed arches or who are hyperpronating, it causes your knees to collapse in, that causes your thigh bone or your femur to rotate inward, it can cause your pelvis to tilt forward, and then before you know it, you've got issues like low back pain, or for me, it was left knee pain because I was not grounding properly or sensing the ground through my foot, and it was going up the chain, and my hip was weak, and all these things were going on. So,
and I've seen you do this with a couple different of your clients, and I really like this idea. And sometimes when we're standing and we're so used to an old movement pattern, we can't get out of it. So for those of you that have no idea what we're talking about, and you're like, well, I am pushing down through the ground. I've seen Hannah adjust a client and actually have them lay on their back and ground with their legs at like a 90-degree angle and their feet on the wall. And then that creates a whole different sensation, and you have a different awareness of what's going on in your foot, and you're not putting all of your weight. Maybe you're pronating or doing something weird when you're standing, and it kind of takes the pressure off. It's more of like a low-hanging fruit exercise of, okay, I'm going to have you lay on your back, and let's just take it, make it a little bit easier. We're not going to put so much on your feet, and now you can really think about your feet as something separate.
yeah.
So if you are curious about all of this, it's like a really good exercise that you can kind of do to see, oh, do I know how to ground and create that sensation of a triangle underneath my foot by laying on your back and then putting your feet kind of in a 90-degree position on the wall.
Yeah, so if you want to try that and see if you can do this, basically, it's like a weightless grounding. So we've taken your body weight out of it, so it's more of how can you contact the ground when you're actually not even loading your own weight. So if you lay at a wall and then you're on the floor and you lay in a tabletop position, so hip and knees are at 90 degrees and your feet are planted on the wall and you're in the tripod, find the knuckle of your big toe, the knuckle of the fifth toe, and your heel. And then just gently maintain contact with those 3 points and press into the wall and see what muscle turns on. You should feel your glute turn on, but a lot of people aren't grounding properly. So then they get their quad, because their motor habit, their motor pattern is to just, ground through their quad, because they're not used to getting in through the heel point more than the other two, or we've all got kind of wonky patterns from just, habits and footwear.
Yeah.
So I do like that one.
I do think I just thought I was just remembering you doing it, and I was thinking this is such a good little exercise because it isn't always available for people to, especially if they haven't spent a lot of barefoot time, to really feel what's going on in their foot. So that's a really easy way to check it out. So now we got through the foot, we got through the tripod. So now we got to put our foot in something, right?
What are you going to put your foot in?
Well, I guess for me, it depends on what I'm going to do. I am not the person who has one shoe for every little thing. I have lots of shoes for other things.
Good.
So we're going to do a little breakdown of why we should have some different shoes and why we should spend some time barefoot as well as in different shoes. Hannah's going to talk about her favorite shoe, the HOKA.
I don't hate HOKAs. You want me to talk about running shoes right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so running shoes, we see them everywhere. They are meant for running, which is why they're called running shoes. So most of the shoes that you'll see at, what's the store at the mall? Is it Fit to Run?
Fit to Run.
Yeah, so.
Or whatever, any
running store. HOKAs, Brooks, Asics, anything where like marathon runners, 5K, like I need a shoe with cushion. Those are fine for running, long distance walking, I guess that's fine. But my issue comes from people who are wearing their HOKAs to F45 or Orange Theory is running, but like CrossFit, where you're lifting and you're squatting and you're doing kettlebell swings. We want to make sure that we're able to sense where our foot is and contact the ground. And like I said, most people are having trouble doing that already, even if they're walking barefoot. You know, I was walking barefoot and pronating way too much because of the cleat use. So it's not like barefoot fixes everything. So for me, if I was going to lift in running shoes, I would have a really terrible time figuring out where my foot is in space. And then before you know it, my arches are collapsing in again. I'm getting that left knee pain, and it's like standing on a cloud. You don't really know where those 3 points are.
Yeah. I actually went through this great debate of figuring out what kind of shoe I needed for a particular competition I was doing called a High Rocks. And I mean, I think even if you Google High Rocks, one of the first things that pops up is like, what shoe do I need for High Rocks? Because it has an 8K run, which is broken up into 1Ks. And then in between the 1Ks are 8 physical fitness stations, some of them which include some heavy weight, lots of squatting, lunging, pulling a sled, pushing a sled. So there is this great debate within I would say that realm, the High Rocks realm of, well, what kind of shoe do I need? Because I need something that's going to withstand 6 miles of running, essentially, indoor, on concrete. So you're going to want some cushion, and you're going to definitely want support. But then you also have to consider, oh, well, I'm doing lunges and I'm doing squats. The last station is 100 wall balls. So I'm doing 100 squats with weight, fatigued after 6 miles of running. So what kind of shoe can I get in that I can tolerate all of that stuff? So I knew I needed cushion. So what I ended up doing was, when I did my test for figuring out which shoe I wanted, I was looking at cushioned running shoes. I would do a little jog, but then I would do lunging, and I would see how my knee naturally was tracking in the shoe. So if it was naturally coming too far in, I didn't take that, because I was like, all right, this is pushing my foot or pushing my whole leg too far in. I'm pronating too much. It's just going to screw up my hip over time. So the shoe that I got, it had cushion, and I could lunge. I could do some forward walking lunges and keep a pretty neutral position of my knee. Instead of, let's say coming in, if I'm doing a lunge, my knee was staying kind of right on top of my second toe, where a shoe that I didn't want, my knee was getting pushed in, maybe even inside my big toe, just by the stance of the shoe. So that was, for me, what I was looking for in getting a shoe that could withstand a lot of running, and primarily running, but then also knowing in my mind that I still need to do a lot of knee flexion stuff. I still need to do squats, and I still need to know what the heck is going on in my shoe, in my foot, so I can prevent an injury from happening in the last, 4 minutes of this race that I'm doing.
What shoe was it?
It was, I don't remember.
Oh, the listening cliffhanger.
I know. I want to run.
They're like, tell us. We need to know what shoe to get.
I want to run over there and grab it. I want to say it was.
Were they like your lifting shoes that you'll train clients in, or no?
No.
Okay.
A lifting shoe, and I would say for what I have my clients wear, I primarily want them to wear something that is stable, not necessarily a lifting shoe like an Olympic lifter wears that has like such stiff stability that your foot is not going anywhere, and it has a big heel to toe drop. So a lifting shoe is more formally, you see Olympic weightlifters wear them. They're Nikes, they're Noble brand, they're
they have a rigid,
Adidas.
Heavy heel,
they
right?
Have
in the back.
And a significantly lifted heel, and the heel is rigid. You do not want to run in them. You do not want to do gymnastics in them.
They're very specific.
To weightlifting. I think the most any weightlifter would do in them is, and they might not even do it, but I have seen people do like super high box jumps one at a time.
Yeah.
Really just working on dynamic, explosive movement, and probably just getting used to feeling and being adjusted in the shoe. You're only moving up and down with those, and they're all based on force, and it has that heel elevation, because when you're doing an Olympic lift, like the bottom of your snatch, which is a really deep overhead squat, or the bottom of your clean, depending on how heavy you're lifting, you're getting pushed to the maximum position your joints are going to allow you to, right? So if you're watching, some of the best Olympic lifters in the world, their butt will actually probably almost hit or even touch their heels at the bottom of a heavy clean. So that heel lift is there to support them in those positions, because it takes a lot of mobility to get into that kind of position. And most of these people are strong, really, really strong, and have a lot of muscle on them. So they need a little bit more of that mobility just to get all the way down and then get back up. I guess they need more of that flexibility, I would say, to get down and then back up. And it's something that I wouldn't necessarily have a client wear unless the client came to me being like, I really want to learn how to Olympic lift.
Yeah.
For a client, I just want them to have stability, right? They can have a shoe that the toes are wide, the toe box may be flexy, but the heel is a little more stiff, right? I wouldn't want my client to be able to run more than 800 meters in these shoes. Like, it would probably be uncomfortable to do more than that.
Yeah.
Because that's how much stability I would like to see in the heel.
Well, so like for your High Rocks, because High Rocks is a mix of, you said 6 mile running, right? But you're also doing wall balls and like lifts and stuff. So you weren't looking for HOKAs because you have to do like lifting movements
100%.
where you need to feel where your foot is. But you have people who do the ultra marathons that are usually wearing HOKAs because that's 80, 100 miles.
Yeah.
And so that is very specific to that activity versus mixed activities like CrossFit or
100%. I would say too, one of my clients has done an ultra, and they had specific shoes for the ultra. In fact, they were going back and forth between which ones that they wanted to use. They never wore those in the gym for what we were doing. You know, they were like a barefoot or a more minimal shoe.
Yes.
And they would spend time in both, right? They spend time, working. We would still continue with weightlifting stuff. And he would wear I forget the brand that he would wear, but it was a barefoot, a minimal shoe. And then he would spend time obviously on his runs. He was wearing I think it was a HOKA, or I'm not just super familiar with the running brand names, but it was a more high cushioned shoe, like cushioned from the toe through the heel. There wasn't a big drop.
Well, I have a question for you actually. If you had a client, and maybe it's a new client, and they were coming in for an assessment, you don't have them remove their shoes, right? They train in the shoes that they show up in, right? Or do you have them remove their shoes when you do an assessment?
I think it depends. Like, sometimes I have had them remove their shoes.
But not always.
Not always, because sometimes I can see what's going on. And if I can't really see what's going on with like the knee and the hip, and like something seems to be really off, I'll have them take off their shoes. Or if I cue and I say, hey, push down through here, and I'm tapping the side of their ankle and they can't. Or if I have them if I talk about the tripod and they're like, they seem really lost, then I'll have them take off their shoe. But for the most of the time, I do have them keep their shoes on.
What if they came in a really high stack height, cushioned ultra marathon running shoe, and they're like, well, this is just what I do all my workouts in, lifting, running. Would you just leave it and be like, okay, well, this is what you use? Or would you say, no, take those off. I can't assess you in these with lifting movements.
I would have them remove.
I'm just wondering what you would do.
No, I mean, I would have them remove the shoe, and I would preface.
We're not lunging in HOKAs, right?
I would preface them with this story, which I'm about to tell you guys, which is really hilarious. So one of my very first experiences at a CrossFit gym, I came in and I was wearing a school-issued shoe from when I went to UM, which was a very high cushioned Nike shoe. And I come into the gym, and it was a coach who had seen me before, and he goes, what are you wearing? And I go, I'm wearing my school shoes. He goes, take them off. And I go, what do you mean? I'm in a gym. I have to wear my shoes. He goes, take them off. So I take them off, and he comes over and he takes both of the shoes and he literally chucks them into the parking lot. He's like, you're not allowed to wear these the rest of the class. So that was one of my first experiences where I was understanding weightlifting being so important as to paying attention what's going on in your shoe and in your foot. And because this coach he knew that I wanted to lift heavy. He knew that I was coming in with an athletic background. He knew that I was very competitive. So he took all of that, and then he lit some fire under me by throwing my shoes into the parking lot. And we were just in the gym doing squatting that day anyway, so I didn't really need them. But I would tell them I would tell my client this story and say, this is why, because this is how important it is for you to benefit and to like actually gain some awareness with what is going on in your foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always have people, well, obviously I always have them take them off just to, because I want to look at,
you want to see the structure
foot and everything. But sometimes I've had a few people come in barefoot minimalist shoes, and sometimes like, do I want them to take them off? And then I'm like, yeah, I want to see it, but like, I want to get into the barefoot minimalist shoes next, which is Vivo Barefoot or Zero. Amazon has a brand, Witten. I like the barefoot shoes because for me, I've gone on this journey the last 2 years of just trying to address loading properly and why my left knee was being a little tweaky. And I've just found that having a minimalist shoe, which is just basically a thin layer of fabric, I feel like or rubber between the ground and my foot, gives me the best sensation because I'm hypermobile actually. So I'm air quotes, double jointed. If you have a lot of looseness in your joints, this is more common in women. You can do weird, cool tricks with your fingers, or your knees bend back, or your elbows go like way past straight. That's what hypermobile is. And people like me who have hypermobility issues, we're not as good at sensing where we are in space unless the joint is way at the end range that it technically shouldn't be. So for me, being able to contact the ground and get that feedback has been really helpful just for my knee, for my back, my SI joint, for everything when I'm lifting.
Yeah.
How do you feel about them?
Well, I don't train in what I would say is a barefoot shoe.
Yeah.
I don't even know that it's technically a minimal shoe, but it is a more stable shoe. I do, however, really like spending some time outside of the shoe, which I'm assuming is giving me the same sensation as almost a barefoot or a minimalist shoe. I really like warming up right now without a shoe on. So especially if I know that I'm doing something where I need to have a really strong connection with my feet. So if I'm doing anything that involves legs on the ground, essentially. So I like to have, or if I'm activating my glutes, I really like to do that portion without my shoes on. So I'll even wear like my Birkenstocks and warm up on the bike so the bike pegs don't hurt my feet.
Yeah.
And then wear my glute band and just go through the warm up that way. I wear a shoe from a company called Rad Global, which is just kind of on the scene as far as like fitness shoes. And I have extraordinarily narrow feet also. And I find that the shoe just fits my foot and I don't get foot fatigue at the end of the day. And I spend a lot of time on my feet on that gym floor, which is decently supportive, but it's not anything crazy. But I find that I don't really have that major foot fatigue that some people have. So I do like having a little bit of support, but it's very neutral and it's just giving me that same stability that you're getting in your barefoot shoe.
Yeah. So barefoot shoes, basically, I like them because they enhance natural movement. They can strengthen the foot muscles because it's not allowing for a cushion or putting them in a position like an orthotic would. It's forcing them to work and move you and hold you up. So it can be strengthening and it allows for your toes to actually splay. So we're taking the rubber band off of that mitten that we were talking about earlier and letting your metatarsals and your toes like be in their proper position. Yeah. And when they're in that alignment, the muscles will be able to work at a different angle the way they should. The con with them though is because I don't want a bunch of listeners to rush out and go buy barefoot shoes, right?
And wear them 24 hours a day.
Yeah. They do require a slow transition just to avoid like a stress injury. So don't just go barefoot running,
Well, if you're coming into a barefoot shoe and you have a collapsed arch, or if you don't have, like you said, the proprioception of creating a good tripod, it ain't going to help you.
Yeah. It's not going to do anything for you.
Exactly.
Your muscles have to do the work for you. So if you've been in orthotics your whole life and you go, oh, I shouldn't be in these anymore, I'm going to wear barefoot shoes. You're just going to be collapsing arches just like you are when you're standing at home in your kitchen. If you feel like your arches collapse in, well, the barefoot shoe's not going to fix that. No. So working with a professional on improving your awareness of where your foot is, or foot strengthening exercises, ankle mobility, whatever deficits there are that are going on with you, I would recommend finding a professional and starting to build awareness of your foot.
Yeah. And I think we can kind of dip into the next shoe, which is a high heel. If you're spending time in a boot or a high heel or another type of shoe because of your job, spending a little bit more time barefoot or in a barefoot shoe or in a minimal shoe is going to help counter
balance it.
Counterbalance some of the effects of what happens in anything with the heel, which is like your calf gets shortened, which affects all the way up the chain. It can affect your hamstring, which can pull your pelvis into a different position. If the boot is too small, it can cause bunions. So I would say if you do, or if you like wearing heels, or if you have to for your job, or even a boot has a slight heel. If you're spending time in those kind of shoes, to definitely spend some time in some minimal.
Yeah, do some of the opposite.
Yeah.
My younger sister wears heels and wedges all the time because she works in a high school she's a speech language pathologist, but she likes to dress professionally. So part of that in her mind is wearing a heel. So I'm always sending her barefoot stuff and toe spreaders, and she's like, leave me alone. And I'm like, you're going to get a Morton's neuroma. So if anyone knows what a Morton's neuroma is, it's not fun. It feels like a marble or a pebble is stuck in the ball of your foot. It's usually in between your third and your fourth toe.
Interesting.
And it's your nerve. The nerve has gotten just so pinched and been rubbing. It's like a callus on your nerve. Calluses are on your skin from excess rubbing. Heel spurs or bone spurs are excess rubbing, force on the bone, more bone growth. So a neuroma is just the nerve's been rubbed on, and now you've got this growth on it, and it's usually from excess high heel wearing.
Yeah.
So it's common in women, or you can get it. I know a man who has one from a ski boot injury, which ski boots are really restrictive too, right?
They're super constrictive.
I
just put one on last spring, and I did not remember how insane they are.
Yeah.
When you put yourself into a ski boot, you're going, I have no control from my shin down. Nothing. No, I'm just going to lean.
Yep.
Because they're super binding.
I had some hockey players too. I mean, if you were a professional hockey player and you're in a ski boot, your ankle is in this position, the stuck position.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes almost fused sometimes, the older you get. It's crazy.
100%.
I want to talk about, I have a patient who used to be a professional model, in the 80s and 90s, and she was in heels all the time. And I saw her, she's 60 now, and her feet are completely numb. And they don't know why. It's not from the typical causes of neuropathy, so they'll just call it idiopathic neuropathy, we don't, it just happened. We don't know why.
Understand. It's an anomaly.
Random. And my theory is because she was so
much time
mittened in her high heels, her metatarsals, the bones in the knuckles basically of your foot, were so closed to each other that the fascia and the muscles were also just so closed. Blood flow could not really get to the nerves, the peripheral nerves. It couldn't get to all the structures.
Well, that's
got
100%.
Really tight.
Yeah, that's Chinese foot binding. We just talked about this. They do that so the feet won't grow, so blood won't get there, so the bones won't continue to expand. And then their foot is the same size, forever. Because it literally just goes, we're just going to stop growing.
Yeah.
It's putting the rubber band around your finger until it just falls off because it has no circulation.
Yeah.
So essentially she probably did some sort of degree of damage. Yeah. It's very similar to the foot binding from wearing the heels over and over and over and over and over and over again. And she's probably well, I can just tolerate heels now. And really it was nerves and blood flow being we're just not going to go there anymore because that's a chaos zone.
Slow tissue damage.
Yeah.
I mean, there was other things too, 80s, 90s modeling. That was what was it? The Cosmopolitan diet where it was cigarettes, white wine, and bacon.
Yep.
So there's
hard-boiled eggs.
There's nutritional stuff too that goes into this. But the point is the high heels, really, I think, jacked up her feet. And now she's 60. She's not old. Yeah. She has balance issues.
Of course. Yeah. So, because what do you need?
She can't feel her foot.
Wasn't that a thing where if you had a certain toe, if your big toe is removed, you can't.
That's for balance. Because again,
you literally cannot balance. You cannot run. It is
you can't
so vital. So
I wanted to say, there were pros and cons to, all of the other footwear. I see no pros to the high heels. There's only risks.
Okay, so we could say, maybe they make you feel like you look good. I feel ridiculous. Sometimes I do feel like a baby giraffe in them because I don't wear them enough to be proficient at walking in them.
The pro is fashion. There's no health benefits.
Maybe it makes your butt and legs look a little bit better. I'm not sure. someone out there who loves them. I don't love them, but I participate. I
will wear them
participate
to fancy events. I
Yeah.
mean, so like my recommendation is basically, it's like when you're doing a diet, it's like the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Wear your heels to the events, wear them 20% of the time, but maybe 80% of the time, again, if you're not having to wear them to work, 80% of the time, try and just be in some more minimalist shoes or just flat shoes even to start with. I mean, if you really just want to counterbalance being in a heel.
Yeah. And then if you do have to wear a shoe, let's just call it like a non-functional shoe to work, which could be a heel or a boot or even just like a loafer.
Men's dress shoes with heels on them.
A men's dress shoe. What can we do to keep our feet healthy when we are constantly in this shoe and in these positions that aren't necessarily super functional?
Yeah, let's get into some foot health. So move your toes and your foot. So toe yoga. Everyone's like, what is toe yoga? It's nothing fancy. It's literally putting your foot on the ground and seeing, can I lift my big toe off the ground by itself without the other toes? Can I put the big toe down and lift all the little toes up and keep the big toe down? Can I splay and separate my toes? Can I pick up a marble or, I don't know, a pen or something with my toes?
A bandana.
Like just using them, stretching. You can be on your knees and then sit back on your heels while your toes are up against the ground, like that yoga deep toe stretch.
Yep.
Just giving your body full range and movement.
Yeah, and then just having the awareness of what's going on with your foot and spending more time. Even going to a regular yoga class is beneficial here because you are barefoot and you're on your mat and you're doing some of those stretching, you're doing some of those balance exercises. So I think adding in, spending some time barefoot.
Definitely. Have you used a lacrosse ball or do you massage your feet?
This is one of my favorite things that I do, especially more recently because I've been paddling more. So I'm spending more time barefoot. And even on the type of board I use, it's called a dugout, which it has like a canoe bottom. So if I'm not moving my feet are in a certain position for a long period of time, they are kind of pronated. So I bring an awareness to that and they will get tighter because my normal day, my feet aren't in that position at all. So bringing a lacrosse ball to the bottom of my feet is amazing. I can do it standing. Some people can't even tolerate it standing because it is a lot. It's very intense, but I really like going from basically the, top of my heel and I'll take it kind of up on the arch and then all the way through. And then I'll go back and forth on the top foot pad with a lacrosse ball and I'll stand basically on one leg and then be massaging with the other. And then if you get really intense, you can hold on to a rig or something to balance and put even more weight on the foot.
That sounds horrible.
I know, but it's delightful.
It is the amount of pressure that you want. So hard or soft, just giving yourself myofascial release.
And sometimes you can, again, there are days where more is tolerable and there's days where less is tolerable. If I spent time in heels, I probably would want to massage it out, but I'd be a little more gentle. And you can even do it sitting where you take the ball and you just like rub it on your foot. Where you can dictate how much pressure you want with how much pressure you're using on your hand on the ball. So I love a good lacrosse ball. It's one of the most underrated, cheapest things you could have in your gym.
Definitely. For anything. Not just
so good for any kind of mobility.
And then wearing shoes that match the activity for your loading needs. So again, that means not wearing HOKAs to a lifting session.
Yeah. You wouldn't show up in your high heels to
a lifting session.
Yeah. Or a marathon.
Or a marathon.
Well, I mean, I know they do have like the 5Ks and heels for like whatever.
I don't think I've heard of that.
You haven't heard of that?
No.
I think there's like a women's supportive thing where they have like men run and heel. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent, but so you would want to show up in the appropriate footwear. And I do think that the gym is a little more vague because people think that this is an athletic shoe. I'm showing up in the right shoe, but it's not. When you think of gym and lifting, you need to think of stability, not cushion.
Yeah.
Right? You're not running on concrete for hours at a time. You want to have cushion. You don't want to have cushion under your feet. You want to have stability. You want to be able to feel the ground underneath you, not you're not on clouds here.
Yep. And then the last thing that we have listed is toe spacers.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I talk to people about toe spacers, I'd say 60 to 80% of people don't really know what a toe spacer is.
Yeah.
Do you want me to explain or do you want to talk about it?
Well, there's so many different ones. There's individual toe spacers, which is basically like a silicone little
Yeah, the
single space that you can put in between your toe. Kind of like when you go to get your toes done or a pedicure and they give you the things that go in between.
Yeah, they're all silicone.
Yep. Or sometimes you go to a cheap one and it's like tissue paper.
Sorry, the toe spacers that you just explained are silicone.
Yes.
Not at the pedicure place.
Not at the pedicure place. But yeah, it's basically a device used, whatever material, silicone. I think mine are silicone or some kind of rubber gel or foam, and they go in between your feet, or they go in between your toes to gently separate your toes apart and to kind of realign them and put them in a proper alignment with your bigger bone underneath, which is your metatarsal. So basically they're spreading them out exactly. They're giving your toes space, which is exactly what they're saying, which counteracts any compressive effects of, a shoe,
footwear.
a closed-toed shoe. Mm-hmm. So we are often found with shoes that are squeezing our toes together and creating poor movement patterns, creating weird structural things like bunions or hammer toe.
Morton's
and
neuroma.
Yeah. And then even if your foot is so compressed and you have no awareness to what's going on, you can get collapsed arches, which is where you have complete pronation, you have really bad balance, you have like zero glute activation, and then that goes all the way up the chain from your toe, literally knee, ankle, knee, hamstring, hip, and then through to your head, which is not fun. So wearing a toe spacer and creating that space and creating some alignment can be a way to restore all of that and to reactivate, maybe even reinvigorate if you have any of those issues.
I like it for the tripod grounding too, because if your metatarsals are spaced out, then you can feel that big toe and the fifth toe knuckle a little bit better as well. For getting into toe spacers, they're really not expensive.
There's a lot of different brands too. Like
I get them on Amazon.
I have the actual toe spacer. I'm looking for them. I don't know where I put mine. I have the actual toe spacer brand, and I would say the biggest thing is learning how to put them on correctly so they're doing the right thing. A lot of people, for me, the toe spacer was counterintuitive. I accidentally wore mine upside down for a little bit.
I was like, each toe goes into one of the holes.
I know, that makes sense, but there's an up and a down, right? So I had to figure that out. It does say on the box which is up and which is down. So putting them on correctly and, yeah, like you're saying, to maybe even just start by wearing them. Like, you don't need to do much in them, but put them on, especially if you've been in a situation or maybe you have a foot injury or your feet are bothering you. For me, I could put them on and I could go and do things with them, but I think to start, you should just
start slow.
Yeah.
Like, they're not a quick fix. This is something you get for like the long game. You don't just wear them for a week and go, oh, they didn't work. You just start slowly. You start with like 5 to 15 minutes, because the first week, do that each day. The first week you're gonna feel your body be like 10 minutes in, oh, this is uncomfortable. They're gonna get sore and achy. Listen to your body and take them off. Just do 5 to 15 minutes, whatever your feet can tolerate each day the first week. Then you can start to add more time the next week and more time the next week. And your body will always tell you. There's no special formula of you must hit an hour by X amount of time. And the goal is to ultimately be able to tolerate wearing them for a few hours a day. You don't have to wear them to work. You don't have to leave your house in them. I'll just wear mine around the house for a few hours just to kind of keep that alignment, because I'm not always wearing toe spacers or wide toe box shoes. I still wear high heels. I still wear normal, quote unquote, narrow tennis shoes.
Yeah, don't you run? Do you have a running shoe that you wear?
I actually run in there's a barefoot running
Yes,
shoe,
I've
but
seen them
I
before.
actually ran in my New Balances, which have a high stack height, the other day.
Yeah.
So like I kind of do everything just to train in different forms with my foot.
Yeah.
You can also try to start wearing the toe spacers passively. If you're like, it hurts to stand in them, you can just wear them while you're watching TV.
Yeah.
Just
And then
your body will tell you.
And then eventually over time, like you said, you can walk. I have clients that I know they wear them in the shower. For me, I can wear them and I can do exercises with them. So if I have accessory work, that's lower body specific, I'll put them on for that. And, I'll do stuff that I know is really going to activate like my posterior chain. If I am doing like rear foot elevated split squats or something.
Wearing those toe spacers.
I think I have a video actually.
You do. I love it.
Rocking the toe spacers barefoot in the gym, wearing them just because it's just benefiting my foot position, but it's also helping me go up the chain and activate and making sure that from my hip down to my literal toe is aligned.
I think that's pretty much all the guidance I have for the toe spacers though. I mean, you just start slow, listen to your body, increase time in them each week, and you can wear them all day. I've never done that. I don't feel like I need to do that. And now I started wearing them maybe 2 years ago, and I did daily just to kind of get the max benefit. And now I put them on for the first time in 3 months for a few hours. I'm in maintenance mode right now.
But yeah, that's the cool thing is that you didn't go backwards, because it's sort of like you've been developing that foot awareness and
strength.
And even time without the toe spacers on, you can go back to them and wear them for a long period of time and loaded and with your body weight, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. So this toe spacers, along with spending time barefoot, as well as all the different footwear we've talked about, is, how to take care and keep your feet healthy. And kind of one of the things that I think people come up against with, footwear is, well, casually, what do I do? Like, what is my solve? I'm going to go to Disney and I'm going to walk and I want to wear a casual sneak, but I don't know what to do. Like, is this going to ruin my body? Am I going to get blisters? Is there a solve for that? Do I need to be wearing my HOKAs? And what I would say is, I think that there's a little trick of wearing what's called a toe sock that might help you mitigate any blisters and let you wear maybe a casual sneaker that's not going to really screw up your body alignment like a HOKA, but also give you that cushion between your feet or between your toes that's not going to give you all the rubbing and blister causing action that you get when you're doing those, park days in a casual shoe. And the story I have behind that is I had a client who was doing an ultra marathon, and he was wearing these really cool socks, and they were toe socks, but they were like a modern toe sock, not like the roller skating.
Fashionable toe socks.
Yeah, not like the fashion rainbow toe socks we used to wear. So he is wearing toe socks, and they're known in the ultramarathon world for, anti-blister. I had another client, she also wore them for regular training as well. So I crewed for this particular ultra marathon. So I ended up running like a 9 mile stint with my client, and I wore just regular socks, running shoes. And I think I had like 4 blisters, and my client ran almost 100 miles in the toe socks and had no blisters at all because the toes were cushioned and separated, which totally like mitigated blisters.
Yeah. No moisture, no rubbing.
No moisture, no rubbing. So if you're doing a park or, going for a long hike, and you're going to be in a hiking shoe, which is, a closed-toed shoe, but also a closer toe box shoe, then I would say try out a toe sock that gives your toes a little bit of separation and room between each other, so they're not just like...
I should have taken those to Europe.
I know, that would have been perfect. You would have had...
Maybe next time.
Next time. They're going in the bag for Portugal for sure.
All right, so let's just summarize like the points of this episode. So the reason we wanted to do this episode was because our feet don't get enough credit or attention from us, and I see a lot of problems that begin at the foot come from the hip, or problems that are at the hip and the low back actually come from the foot. And so problems up the chain might manifest at the bottom and vice versa. I also want you guys to know that shoes should be used as tools, but they don't replace foot strength and awareness. So wear your running shoes to go on a jog, but maybe find a better tool for lifting. We also didn't really talk about orthotics, but the point is orthotics, they're not bad, but they should just be used as tools that you wean off of, because ultimately an orthotic puts your foot in the position for you and it's doing all the work, so it makes us weaker and lazier.
I was going to ask you that.
We don't want to be in them too
If
long.
somebody is diagnosed, I pronate or I supinate and I wear these orthotics and I have to wear them. Is that a death sentence? Or if you were treating somebody, would you go, and I think the answer is probably a little obvious now, but would you take them through like, hey, this is not permanent.
Yeah.
This can be improved on. This isn't like,
I must be in orthotics for the rest of my life because
you're not paralyzed.
Because I pronate. So now I am in these orthotics. Mm-hmm. No. So orthotics can serve a purpose sometimes for short periods of time, but the goal is always to wean off of them because, like I said, they do the work for you. They put your foot in the position, but we have, like I said in the beginning, 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. Like our feet are strong. They're not meant to just be held by something else. They are strong enough to hold their shape and do things on their own and move you if we give them the right amount of challenge and stimulus. And the last thing, try out some toe spacers because they're not that expensive.
No, and spend some time barefoot.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's in a yoga class or maybe it's
in the grass
or at the beach.
If you live at the beach.
Spend some time barefoot and then bringing some awareness to what is happening to your foot when you're barefoot. So
thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for getting with us from our head down to our toes today.
You just came up with that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Reps, what your physical therapist and trainer forgot to tell you.